Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. As many of you already know, we are discussing the hidden cost of being an African American, how wealth perpetuates inequality. Last week, Brother Tawolo and Brother Everett and myself, we discussed the preface. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I like to say preface, but the preface as dictionary.com. That's how they pronounce it. But last week we discussed the preface. Let me mute you out, Brother Everett. Last night we discussed the preface along with the introduction, and it was a very powerful preface and introduction. So, family, if you didn't watch that discussion, please make sure, family, that you go back next Sunday to last Sunday's discussion and check it out. There's a lot of powerful information that was discussed. And so, before we do get tonight's discussion started, I'm your host, Dr. Oya Edwin Ma'at, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on over to my brother Tawolo to introduce himself. You got to, there you go.
Hello, family. How you doing? This is Brother Tiwolo, pronounced T-Wolo. Definitely, and I'm excited by reading this book here. We had a powerful discussion last week. Thank you guys for inviting me on the panel.
Brother T, please tell them about your channel, JT Coins. Let the people know.
Yeah. Yes, guys. My channel is JT Coin Rings. I love precious metals. I collect coins for the last 3 years. What I've been doing, I made a business out of it. First a hobby, making it into a business where I make rings out of gold and silver coins. So they're United States coins and always coins from all over the world, even as far as Egypt.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, T-Wolo.
T-Wolo.
Thank you so much, big brother T. Brother Everett, please introduce yourself to the people.
Peace and blessings, Brother Everett Winchester from UNIA ACL in Baltimore and the Real Truth and Power Live podcast.
All right, brother. I see that we have brother the Melanated Cafe, African warrior in the building. Peace to you, brother. My beloved sister, a beautiful mind. She is in the building. Brother John T. Lee, he said, Hotep, peace to the panel. He's in the building. And the number one moderator on YouTube, New Black World Order, he is in the building. He said, peace, family, glad you're here. And he's telling people to share this discussion. So, all right, brothers, let's jump into it. Chapter 1. The first thing I want to do, because in this chapter, Shapiro talks a lot about income and wealth. And so I know I always say, let's start at the beginning and work our way through. But I actually want to start on page 32 and then flip back to page 21, because at the bottom of page 32, he defines wealth and income. And so he defines wealth. He says, by wealth, I mean the total value of things families own minus their debts. Income, on the other hand, includes earnings from work, interest and dividends, pensions, and transfer payments. The distinction between wealth and income is significant because one signifies ownership and control of resources, and the other represents salary or its replacement. And so I just wanted us to have a working definition of wealth and income, because that's what's being discussed throughout chapter 1. So at the beginning of chapter 1, he spends maybe 10 pages talking about the financial conditions of 4 families. It was actually 2 sets. It's 4 families, but it was 2 families were families that were held by single mothers. One was a black single mother, the other one was a white single mother, and then the other 2 families were, I believe, they were white middle class families. So one of the brothers, could you please kind of describe the stories that Shapiro told regarding the financial condition of these families, and then we can move on. We can move into what distinguishes the families from one another. But I just want people to understand what the financial conditions of these families were or are.
You want to go ahead, Brother Tuola?
Let me start off with just this one thing. Dr. Mayat, that was beautiful that you started off with the definition, because that definitely will help everyone to follow along with these stories with more of a picture, exactly the difference of each family practice based off what they had to work with, right? So that was a beautiful explanation of what wealth and assets really is. And when we were starting off talking about Vivian, if I'm not mistaken. So Vivian is the first family. She had twin boys, and the difference was Vivian had assistance from the state, right? She had assistance from the state. She had the inability to move in a neighborhood that she deemed would help her and her family escape crime. So it was limited based off her skill set. If it's not mistaken, I believe in on page let's start page 22. It explains that she was making anywhere from $700 a month, which makes it very limited if we look at it in terms of our day to actually do anything that could take care of family in the best way by putting away for the special needs that her child had, in order for them to go to better schools, in order to even put away for what we call assets. But one particular thing about Vivian and her family was that Vivian was one of the first to graduate college. So she did some of the things that we asked our children to do, or some of the things that we did ourselves. Correct? We went to college, and we thought that, hey, that would be a good opportunity to take care of our family, but not having the actually skills, the skill set, and also not having the ability to live in a home that provides safety for your child, and also not having that asset passed down for a family member that could help you in time of needs. So this is basically what I saw, and I grabbed from Vivian's story.
And then the next person was Caitlin, or Catherine.
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 Yep.
So yeah, so go ahead and which one of you want to talk about Catherine?
I can talk a little bit about Catherine. She kind of had the same financial income as Vivian in a lot of areas, but what made her more powerful is that she didn't have to have student loans or anything like that. Most of her money came from inheritance. And she still has some of that inheritance. So she was able not to have school loans. She didn't have to go into things with debt, which a lot of, Black people go into, thinking American dream is to go to college and we got to get these student loans and so forth. She was able to use a different kind of strategy and system where she got inheritance from her family. She was able to take care of all of her bills and so forth. And she was able to go forth and move into a better community. And I believe this was the one that, if I'm not mistaken, she was even working like part-time. She wasn't even working full-time. And she was still able to live a better life than the Vivian, who had clearly had to get welfare assistance, government assistance, and things of that nature. So it goes back into like what you said, Dr. Ma'at, my brother Tuola was stressing about assets and being able to provide assets for our future kids and how that can help them overcome. So she was able to use those assets to get out of debt and to move forward in life and live comfortably.
So it's interesting. So one woman, she was an African-American woman, a Black woman, single mother, had a son. This other woman, white woman, son, same age, right? They both made the same income, but yet their situations were just different, right? And the difference was that the white woman, like you said, Brother Everett, the white lady had assets to live off of. She was living off her inheritance. She worked part-time. She was making, I think they said $16,000 a year, and she would tap into her inheritance to do certain things, like you said, to improve, to move into an area, to give her son who was special needs a better education. So the difference between them was the assets. And so then Shapiro, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brother Tuwolo.
Let's not brush past one other different that she had. She had an occupation that allowed her to be remote.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her occupation, which allowed her to be remote. She could work inside the high-rise office, or she could work at home, which gave her more time to spend with her child, who had special needs, as you know what I'm saying, at that time. So once we look at, okay, we had Vivian who worked many hours just to make ends meet, only living off her income based off the definition that was given. which takes care of today's life. Catherine had the ability and a skill set to work either in office or at home, even though she worked part-time, which allowed her to the same amount of $16,000 a year, right? The benefit was the tax game that she didn't understand how it worked. It was just a game that, hey, when the money got to a certain point, it had to be released, and she received some of it by chance to live a colorful life, and a life that allowed her to raise her child and also still work and be stress free.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then Shapiro moves the discussion into two white families, the Ackermans and the Cummins, and he tells us that the Ackermans, they had pretty good jobs together. You know, their incomes topped 80,000. They had in their savings, it says they built a net worth of $100,000. It says their home equity was worth $67,000. And they also had about $60,000 in various retirement programs. All right. But what was significant about them is that they had parents who, well, they both worked for large organizations that promised to pay for their college tuition for longstanding employees. So they didn't have to dip into their assets to take out loans for college. It says Peter's parents helped with the down payment on their home. Okay. And so it says with the help of the down payment, no college loans, and especially the equity built up from their starter home, along with stable jobs and high quality benefits, allowed them to own a home in a suburban community of their choice. Okay. And so I'm sitting back, brother T-Wolo, and I said, golly, can you imagine you working at a job that pays for your college tuition, and then your parents give you a down payment for your house? That's not the story of most African Americans. Most of us are in college debt. But what I give thanks for is that I had a mother. You know what? Why you go like that? And look, and T-Wolo, look, a lot of my cousins, they're 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 in the rear for college loans. That's the story of the average African American. But I give thanks that I had a mother who she was determined that, and my mother was working since she was 13 years old. She was assisting my grandmother with helping provide a stable household for her younger siblings. And so my mother, she's been working since she was 13. In fact, I know she's watching, and she doesn't know how to stop working. She's almost 69 and she's still working. But she said that when she kept telling herself when she was young that she would make sure that her children don't have to work while they are in college. They don't have to work. She said she wanted to create that situation, and she did create that situation for me. So when it came time for me to go to college, I didn't have to worry about household bills because I lived at home. So my mind was on paying for college. So I went into the military to get the Montgomery GI Bill. I applied for the Science and Technology Scholarship with the state of Maryland. And I think I had a balance of like $800 left over for fees. And then I had to pay for books, which may have been maybe $500 per semester. So each semester I was paying $1,300 out of pocket, but that was great in comparison to what I could have been paying. And then I ended up getting an additional scholarship in my sophomore year, which reimbursed me for whatever money I kicked out in my previous years. And it carried me all the way through. So I literally got a free bachelor's degree. And then because I did well in my studies, a professor at Morgan State University, I give thanks for him, Dr. Carl White, he saw my hard work and dedication, and he provided me with an opportunity to go through the 5-year doctoral program to get my doctorate in engineering. So I literally got my education for free, but that would not have happened if I did not have a parent that made sure that I didn't have to worry about anything else. I didn't have to worry about the necessities. They were taken care of. And so I give thanks for my mother who's watching. And I give thanks to Dr. Carl White and other people like Miss Mack, who saw the potential in me and made a way so that I didn't have to get into debt. And so that's very important. Did anyone want to jump in? Okay.
I want to say that's definitely excellent. Your mom provided you the opportunity, and it will help more families if that could be provided as well. But let's go back to understand what Vivian had different than Catherine from that point before we go to the Ackermans.
Okay,
Um,
please do.
Vivian didn't have, we didn't hear mention of a family assistant in any manner. Number one, when it came down to Catherine, we didn't hear about any living family assisting by any manner, but assumed to be deceased family member was going to assist further than what was already been done for her.
Mhm.
So even though we didn't physically hear Vivian's family, we saw her hard work, her income, no assets, continuing to move as much as she could possibly do. And we heard Catherine not having hearing about her parents, but they heard where her father left her based from an estate. But soon a home was going to be left to her when her grandmother passed.
Mhm.
Now the Ackermans is a whole nother story.
That's
It's a
right.
story of a family who purposely got the income and built the assets. So in this explanation, Tom Shapiro made sure that we had basically three different distinct families so we
Mhm.
could all compare.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Four.
three to this point.
Three to this
Yeah.
point. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. You're correct. And so then he talks about the Cummins family, and he said the Cummins works part time as an accountant. Her husband teaches, in the school system. They have a child, 4-year-old child, and a 9-year-old child that they provide exclusive schooling and private tutoring for. It says their incomes are supplemented by by 30,000 a year in interest from an inheritance. Okay. And it says that her parents are paying for the private
Mhm.
school bills. It says she explains that the family money goes way back. It is money her father inherited, and it will last a long time. She already inherited about $350,000 with more than 1 million sitting there. She said with her name on it. So
Mm.
again, like you said, brother T, the point that not brother, but Mr. Shapiro is trying to drive home is that wealth confers privileges and advantages. So the Ackerman, Catherine, the Ackermans, and the Cummings family, they had the privileges and advantages that what was the sister's name, Vivian, that
Vivian.
Vivian didn't have, because they had assets, they had inheritance, and like you said, brother Tiwolo, they had family assistance. Their family was in a situation to pay for private school, to give them a down payment for a home. And so they're because of this, because again, going back to assets, because of that, they had privileges and advantages that Vivian just didn't have.
Mhm. I think
Awesome.
it was one spot, wasn't it? Was it the Cummings? She even admitted that I think it was Elizabeth Cummings. Yeah, no question about it. They wouldn't even have considered private school if their parents didn't pay for it for their kids. So that lets you know off the bat that that wealth grows deep throughout, inheritance of families and families doing for families.
Absolutely. And did you notice in the paragraph in the middle of page
Yes.
30, she said she couldn't even imagine it being a different way. It's so normal in their family.
Yep.
It's normal, like T. Well, it's normal to have an inheritance where you could tap into $350,000 when you want to.
Right.
It's so normal to them that she said, "I can't imagine it any other way." I thought that was powerful.
Well, I mean, think about this. How could you imagine it being any other way when it's always been that way?
Facts.
Hmm.
This is something that they put in the pot and stir on a daily basis. The schools, the house, the job. It's always been a discuss part of the discussion. Marrying up, being in the right circles. These are the conversations that some may have to ensure that the wealth stays encalcified in that one area. But
Hmm.
let's go to page 31 when talking about the Cummings. One thing that we have to look at and be very aware of, the wealthy Cummings family probably would not notice the financial impact for a long time because the interest of Elizabeth's inheritance alone gives them more money than Vivian Aurora earns working a full-time job. She said, now they point out Vivian more than she would on a full-time job. They get an interest. They'll never feel any financial impact for a long period of time, along with the assets. They're not touching the principal. They're relying on what is just given off the interest, and it's more than a person works full-time. That's something to think about.
It is something to think about. And peace to brother Akkad. I see you in the building. My young African warrior, Jeremiah Africa. He's in Ghana. My brother repatriated. Young, I think he's 27, 28. Decided up and go to Ghana and to go build over there. You know, something that a lot of us, I mean, at 26, 27, I didn't have the heart to do that, brother Tuolo. I didn't even have the mindset at that time to go repatriate. So I just wanted to acknowledge that young African warrior, Jeremiah Africa, in the building. But let's continue. So on page 31, he says this, and I put stars next to this statement. He says, wealth is critical to a family's class standing, social status, whether they own or rent a house, housing, the kind of community they live in, and the quality of their children's schools. He says, then I suggest it is possible to distinguish whether a family's current position of life trajectory is based upon earnings and achievements, or wealth and family legacies, or some combination. I thought those two statements were very, very powerful. So he said, hold up, you know, wealth is really key to where you live, the opportunities that you have, the opportunities that your children have, hell, the opportunities that your children have. He's saying I could basically look at the wealth in your family and use that as an indicator to tell you where your family is hitting based on that. And so I just thought that that was powerful. And how at the bottom he says lack of assets, much less family money, will cap families' mobility. So if you don't have assets, you know, the chances of upward mobility in your family is slim to none. And so I say all that, brothers, to say this. When we have children, and my father's watching, I just actually got off the telephone with him. We had this conversation. When you have children, it is imperative that you create assets for them to inherit. We can't just be bringing children into the world for just bringing them into the world, No, we got to make sure that they have assets so that when we close our eyes, that we can rest peacefully knowing that our legacy is financially stable and secure.
That's a good point. Good point that you bring, Dr. Ma'at, because we have to look at the examples that's given thus far. Vivian's family, no assets to pass down, only relying on income that she makes at this present time. Unlike Catherine, who doesn't even care about, you know, furthering her skills. She has assets from a family member that will also take care of right now and also take care of it later. But one distinct difference, again, she has the home from her grandmother that will pass down. Then you have another family who has the ability to still work and still build upon what they have for the next generation and still living off the interest of a family member right now, the Cummings. So they're building on what they actually have now, and they can still pass down to the next generation. So the asset is definitely has to be there for all our families for something to build on. Like, what can we do? How can we do it? You know, if we're the only generation where we stand right now to do it, but we can't go past this page, past 31, without saying this one thing. Vivian believed that she believed heavily in the lottery. Why? Why do I say that? Because she said, maybe I'll find a millionaire husband.
That's right.
Hey, I'll work until maybe I'll find a millionaire husband, and maybe he'll take me out these woes. That was the first quote on the starting of the chapter.
Absolutely. So family that's just now joining us, we're discussing the hidden cost of being African American, how wealth perpetuates inequality by Thomas Shapiro. We're in chapter 1, family. We're in chapter 1, which talks about how the difference between wealth and income and how wealth confers privileges and advantages. Okay. And so that's what we're talking about, family, who people are joining us. So let's move on to, I guess, 32 to 35, brothers. Does anyone want to take it over? The top of 32? I don't really think there's anything because we kind of discussed what's in the first paragraph about the wealth that's coming from the baby boomers in the next couple of years. So he just says that, he reiterates that the baby boomers are getting ready to transfer a great wealth to the next generation. In fact, Brother T. Wolo sent me an article that I read. And maybe Brother T, if you could drop that in the chat, but it was an article that was published by Forbes magazine that calls this the greatest wealth transfer, which is coming from the baby boomers, which is moving from the baby boomers to the next generation. And so he talks about that. And he says, so they're passing down, this money, from one generation to the next. He said, but I submit what is really being handed down from generation to generation is the profound legacy of reproducing inequality. So if you're not tied to a baby boomer that's transferring this wealth, then I don't want to just say you're going to feel it, but your financial condition is going to be much different than those who are getting wealth transferred to them by the boomers. And so I give thanks that, my mom had the vision to get a life insurance policy and to get a savings account, so that when she transitioned, I have the assets that I'm creating, but then I have something that my mom, who is a boomer, would be able to pass to me. All right. But then he moves the conversation into the asset perspective. And we've already defined wealth versus income at the beginning of the conversation. And my mama just joined. I thought she was watching the whole time, Brother T. And she just joined. Mama, I was talking about you. I didn't mention you a few times and you just hopping on, Mama. But go ahead, Brother T. It seemed like you wanted to say something, brother.
No, I wanted you to, if you could, find that passage again on page 30 and read that again before we go to the next phase. Just so for those who just joining could get that definition, working this definition again.
Okay. At the bottom of page 32, Shapiro defines wealth and income. He says by wealth, I mean the total value of things families own minus their debts. Income, on the other hand, includes earnings from work, interest and dividends, pensions, and transfer payments. The distinction between wealth and income is significant because one signifies ownership and control of resources, and the other represents salary or its replacement. But I love, and I have actually because now that we're actually on page 33, I want to continue reading this paragraph because I think that is very important. He says, however, the difference between the two is often muddled in the public mind. When people think about income and wealth, some people think that your income is your wealth. Right. And it's a big difference. So he says that the difference between the two is often muddled in the public mind, and only recently have the social sciences began to treat wealth as an intrinsically important indicator of family well-being that is quite different from income. Another perspective on advantage and disadvantage emerges when wealth is used as an indicator of racial inequality. Wealth represents a more permanent capacity to secure advantages in both the short and long term, and it is transferred across generations. Income data is collected regularly, and vast stores of it exist. In contrast, wealth data has not been collected systematically in issues such as how to value a home, how to view home equity, whether retirement plans should be counted, and how to value a business make it hard to measure. So he said a whole lot in that paragraph. He defined income. He defined wealth. He said there's a difference between the two. He just told us what the difference was. With wealth, you have security and it's transferred. And he said that people typically don't keep track of wealth data, but they do keep track of income data, and they use that as a measure for racial inequality. He's saying we shouldn't be looking at that. We should be looking at wealth. Do any of the brothers want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in there real quick and piggyback off one of the families, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of them, or he was talking about how one of them viewed income as something they use just to pay their bills and stuff like that. That really messed with me because my income has to pay bills. I got to save. I got to do this. I got to do that. and they looking at assets as their wealth, you know. And I think that's something that we psychologically got to get over. Like when we're working, that should be going to our bills and stuff like that. Another thing that piggybacks off of that is when one of the families says start a home. Like I'm getting a starter home as opposed to I got a home and maybe later I can move out. You know, they're like, this is just the beginning. This is one asset I'm going to use to create more generational wealth. So when you start talking about wealth versus, you know, wealth and income, it's a big difference. Income is something that we're doing. We're going to work, pay our bills, try to save a little, but we should be using that income to create wealth, getting assets and things of that nature. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, Catherine said it. Catherine said income.
That's what Catherine.
Yeah, yep. Catherine said income supplies life support, but assets provides opportunities.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's right. That right there. I'm glad you pointed that out and ended up with that quote there, because that is a great segue to understand that how could you do all this when you're struggling? Mm-hmm. It's like they say, you know, building this plan while, you know, trying to build while flying a plane. It just can't happen. You just can't do it. You can't pull a part of your income and do all this, raise the kids, daycare, college tuition for the future, buying a home, putting away for 401k, getting your Roth IRA filled up, all from this money. You make 80,000, you're only bringing home maybe 45. Mm-hmm. You know, the average rent in Baltimore where we live, right, is around $800 to $1,500 a month. Mm-hmm. You know, then you're looking at what's your home expenses, your monthly expenses. It's hard to put that money away. These people are allowed to do that, but also have the ability to live off their investments or their assets that's passed down. Not their present day investments. That's for their children. What they put them. One of the families said, "I dare not touch it." Mm-hmm. I dare not touch these my assets. The assets are no touch. I live off my income. Right. Who can say that?
We can't. We like go ahead, brother.
But still they can say that with authority and with a smirk on their face and say, "But if anything happens, I can live off the interest."
That's crazy.
More interest than a person makes in a year.
In a year.
That's amazing.
In a year, it is amazing, and you know, and so that's why he talks about this policy. He says we need policies. He said that it is obvious that the positions of the two families with the same income but wildly different wealth assets are not identical. He says it is time for us to take this into account in public policies. Policies create wealth. Yeah. Dr. Ball said it. People attacked him for saying it. He's saying, you know, we need to go after the policies. We need legislation in place that will create wealth. Because like you just said, Brother T-Wolo, if I'm working with $80,000, like by the time you tax it 30%, I'm down now to 45, maybe 50,000. I got to take that 50,000. I have to now provide the necessities for, you know, my babies, you know, and so how can you use your income for assets? Like how can you go get assets if you're using it? So policy needs to be in place that will create wealth for African-American people. And so I agree. And Dr. Ball, everything that Shapiro was saying, Dr. Ball, they're both in line with one another. Both of the ideas. But moving on to page 35, I love when he says this. He says working class and poor families use wealth for life support, to cushion bad times and to meet emergencies. You know how we always say we got a little cushion, or your parents say you better put something aside for a rainy day. So it says, you know, typically if a working class or poor family, if they do have some wealth, they use it for life support. They trying to hold on, you know.
That's right.
It says, hold on. Let me finish. It says wealth support. Middle class families, in contrast, use their assets to provide better opportunities that advantage them. He says in our conversations about the power of assets, working class and asset poor families dream that assets will give them freedom from a situation or ease difficulty or relieve a fear and overcoming hardship, whereas middle class and wealthy families see assets as power and freedom to leverage opportunities.
That's right.
Go ahead, brother T. Waller. I see you wanted to jump in.
I wanted to point out what Miss Harriet said in the chat. She says, "And don't get fired." No, because think about this. While we're worrying about all of this, it keeps you in line at your job. Why? Number one, because you're afraid to leave, because you can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sean Combs said, "I can't stop. I won't stop. I can't stop.
Won't stop.
I can't stop because I have to continue this job that may pay low, but it pays something in order to keep it moving." And sometimes we're stuck in a terrible situation that because we can't go back to school, who's going to take care of the kids? But these assets, these transformative assets, allows that person to do so. It allows that person to go back to school if they wanted to. You know, what we have to do is gain another job. We'll spend less time with families just to make that next move. So when you have these things in place, it's a lot more mobility that can happen within our families. So this is a benefit of doing business. But think about this: the starter home, that may be a start. A smaller home that a family that we can do as a family to at least say, hey, this is going to be for our residual income or something for later.
Yes.
If you can't do it individually, but that's the benefit of having family working towards a common goal. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, that was powerful.
That was powerful. That was powerful. That was very powerful. I love at the bottom of page 35 where he says the correlation between income and wealth is weak. It's weak. There, you know, it's a weak correlation there. And then he moves on to say that he says because wealth sometimes represents inequalities from the past, it not only is a measure of differences in contemporary resources, but also suggests inequalities that will play out in the future. So your wealth is an indicator. Your family's wealth right now is an indicator of your family's social and class standing in the future. So someone can look at your family, see what they own right now, and predict where your family will be in future generations.
You know, it's crazy you said that, Dr. Ma'ad. I was doing something for my business, and they were asking for, you know, my income. So I'm going off of, you know, the business makes this amount of money. Then it goes on and they're like, no. How many printers do you have? How many buildings do you have? How many cars do you have? You know, when did you get the car? How much did they depreciate? And I was starting to think, like, why are they asking me all of this? And now they're starting to come to fruition that, yeah, they want to know everything I own, what my business actually is worth. You know, what trucks or whatever we have, it has that depreciated. Is it a loss of value? So they looking at it, even dealing with businesses and getting contracts and everything. They ask how much are you worth? They want to know what assets you have. They want to know. Yeah, they want to know.
You said it right there. They want to know if I'm going to give you a loan, I want to know what your assets are worth. So if you default on that loan, then I can come get your assets and cash them in to repay back this loan. Family, I see more people have joined. We're talking about the hidden cost of being African American, how wealth perpetuates inequality by Thomas Shapiro. In this particular chapter, he's talking about income versus wealth and how wealth provides opportunities and advantages that income does not. So I just wanted to put that out there because I see more people are coming in. All right. And so he moves into talking about an asset poverty line, this particular section, an asset poverty line. And so he says, if one of the brothers, do you want to go over the stats at the top of page 37?
The official poverty rate part?
Yes.
He says the official poverty rate based upon annual income dropped from 52.2% in 1983 to 12.8% in 1989 and to 11.7% in 2001. 18,104 for the family of four. Using these numbers, we could say that the rising tide of the long boom during the 1990s seemed to lift many, if not all, boats. The government releases these official numbers annually. I didn't know that. And they give us a good idea of the scope and nature of the poverty for that year. Keep going.
Oh
You
no,
got it?
that was
Okay.
beautiful. No, and he's talking about how so they're looking at basically income poverty in this particular I think those stats, yeah, were based on income poverty. And so Shapiro, he's saying, wait a minute, we don't need to be looking at income poverty. I mean, that's fine and dandy. He's saying some things could be changed, like if we erase discrimination, from promotion and hiring, that will narrow the disparity between incomes, regarding African American people and white folks. But he's saying that we need to look at asset poverty. And so he goes on to say, and I'm at the top of page 838, actually the second paragraph. He says that in 1984, he's looking at financial, he gives a chart that's on page 39, but he says the APL measure allows an examination of asset poor families since 1984. So in 1984, he says 41% of American families fell below the asset poverty line, and that rate held fairly stable until it dipped several points to 36% in 1999. Nearly 4 households in every 10 in the world's wealthiest nation, which is supposed to be America, America, it says nearly 4 households in every 10 in the world's wealthiest nation do not own enough assets to live a poverty, and I inserted free because I think, I always, Brother T, when I'm reading books, find where words are missing and something is, but I think he meant to say to live a poverty-free lifestyle for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the boom years of the 90s, which produced enormous wealth and record low unemployment, lifted 7% out of the asset poverty, The asset poverty line shows that the effects of the tremendous run-up in the stock market in the 1990s that created over $8 trillion in equity barely trickled down to typical families. So then he says one can view income poverty as a phenomenon affecting a relatively small percentage of Americans, perhaps those who have educational and skills deficits, physical disabilities, or other personal deficiencies, whereas asset poverty impacts African American people, entire race, because of us being locked out from the ability, us being not given the ability to accumulate wealth by being denied home ownership, not being, as you said, Brother Tiwolo, not being able to take advantage of the GI Bill or the Federal Housing Act, and so we were literally locked out of wealth. So when you look at the asset poverty, when you look at that for Black people, and there's a chart, brothers and sisters who are watching, the chart looks kind of blurry, so I don't want to hold it up. But even if you kind of look at it, this is Black folks right here. Do you see it says over 56% of Black families live below the asset poverty line? This is Black folks right here, family. And we're the white folks. These are the white folks in the middle. These are the white folks in the middle, family. So we lack assets. And it says 39% of Americans' children are being raised in families that fall below the asset poverty line. And that's just American families. Can you imagine, Brother Tiwolo, if we look specifically just at African American families and how many of those children live below the asset poverty line? Did any of the brothers want to get in?
I think that's eye opening. It's kind of scary, and it kind of reminds me of the date that we talked about our last episode, our last talk, where we discussed it in 2053. Our median net worth of our families will be 0. Now, how are we supposed to get ahead or move to the next, generation in a better standing if right now we're starting to build at this present point? Like if you're the family member, the only one of your family member who has the home, and now you can pass down for your generation, it reminds me of that illustration of the race. Everyone's on the track and they tell you to start, ready, and go. You have the black, you have the whites, you have another race, and they tell you to go. Well, they already have like 200 years of advance advancement when it comes down to assets being transferred, land, stocks, pensions being passed down, and they're telling you in 1965, now that I gave your family members this good federal job, you should be ready to go. And we're just dragging along and being asset poor. You know what I'm saying? So this is something to look at. And I hope that the chat and also the panel looks at what can be done, not just for ourselves, but what can be learned from this situation right here that we can teach others to, hey, we need to start to fix this. If we got children, we have family members, we may have to say, hey, what can we do in order to build an asset that's for us and also for our family? So there's something to look into, because this is kind of dismal as we go through this chapter. I'm kind of thinking in my mind, what can I do for myself to make sure that my children are in a better situation, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And so, actually, and I talked about how 39% of Americans' children are being raised in families that fall below the asset poverty line. And I said, can you imagine if we looked at it specifically for African Americans? And he did on page 40, but I didn't turn the page. He says in 1999, 26% of all white children grew up in asset poor households, compared to 52% of Black American children and 54% of Hispanic children. The rate for whites has held steady since 1984 at about 1/4, while the rate for Hispanic children has risen and the rate for blacks have fallen. And so that's cool. It seems like we are headed in the right direction, especially with a lot of people now who are demanding tangibles for us. A lot of people are saying, look, we can't keep on voting for voting's sake. We have to get back to practicing group politics. We have to get involved in politics. We have to vote for people who are going to give us tangibles. Those tangibles meaning, reparations, equity and community development, things of that nature. And so pushing politics and getting involved in politics. And so I give thanks to this movement you see growing, on not even on social media, because people were out there too. You got grassroots organizations right now fighting for policies to be passed that will create wealth and opportunities for the Black community. Someone asked, what was the name of the book again? Family, we are reading The Hidden Cost of Being African American, How Wealth Perpetuates Inequality by Thomas Shapiro. All right. And so we just finished discussing chapter 1. Do you all have any closing words?
No, there's a powerful book. I just wanted to say one thing, though, when we start talking about income and, getting assets is something. The author had mentioned it early in the chapter about credit. It's very hard to maintain good credit when you're struggling income-wise. But when you're living off of assets and your income is just paying bills, it's easier for you to get a credit card, use that to pay your bills, use your income to pay the credit card bill off. Credit is real crucial as far as obtaining assets, and all of this falling in line about getting assets and providing it to our next generation is giving them a big advantage as far as not only having assets, but obtaining credit, keeping good credit, and things of that nature.
Yes, indeed. Brother Robert Reed, I see you said was the book written before 2008 and the current pandemic numbers. Oh, no, brother. This book was written in 2004. But Can you imagine, Brother Robert Reed, what those numbers look like after, given that we just went through a pandemic? Woo! I'm pretty sure since a lot of these white folks had assets that they were able to survive. We lose a job. Black folks lose their job or lose the income. We're done. It's a wrap for us. But with these white folks, brother Robert Reed, a lot of them probably lived off or tapped into those assets and tapped into that inheritance to get by. So, Brother Robert Reed, thank you so much, brother, for bringing that up. That's something to look at now. That's a great point. During the pandemic, when we lost our jobs, that was it. But when they lost their jobs, they had assets they could tap into. So thank you so much, Brother Robert Reed, for that. I see Queen T is in the building. She says she's getting her book. Pharaoh said it was originally published in 2003. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I see Brother Marquise Kid. He's in the building. Brother Marquise, did you want to come on and say something? Because he's in the building. I'm chatting away in the chat. Did you want to come on, brother? did you want to come on, brother, and say a few words, brother?
He's right about that comment about credit too. Use credit to build and purchase assets, not for your personal expenses. That's the point. Definitely, yeah.
Love it, brother Marquise.
Yeah, he been putting definitely some good jewels in the chat. I've been definitely reading on some things about that he thought would be good for the discussion. Like you said, I would love to see him on the panel to discuss or ask those questions.
Absolutely.
My thought is that I remember maybe like 3 to 4 years ago when the government shut down, and just the government shut down. Prior to the pandemic, we had just the government workers who were out of work for 3 months, and we had them experiencing late payments on their mortgages. Some was about to lose their car. I was posed the question, and just for us and the chat to think about, if you would lose your job today, how long will it be until you'll be in a destitute manner?
Good question. Good question. Great question, brother Tiwolo. Great question. I was waiting for brother Marquise to click on, but I guess that brother will join us another time. So family, thank you for tuning in. Next week, we will be discussing chapter 2 of The Hidden Cost of Being an African-American. Family, if you don't have the book, please go out and grab the book. I would prefer that you would patronize your local Black bookstore if you have one, or you could call Everyone's Place. You can Google them in Baltimore. They ship around the world, and maybe see if they have it, or somebody else. I know there's another Black bookstore, Black and Nobel in Philadelphia. There are a few of them, Black and Nobel in Philadelphia. There's another one down in Virginia Beach. I think it's called Positive Vibes Bookstore. But there are a few Black bookstores out here. So family, try to get it from a Black bookstore if you can. I know it's convenient to go to Amazon because it shows up at your door tomorrow. And so a lot of us will say, let me order it from there. But try to get it from an independent Black bookstore if you can. We definitely need to support our people. Thank you so much for joining in. Brother Melanated Cafe, he said this was an amazing conversation. My beloved, beautiful mind. She says, thank you for another beautiful build. Queen T, she says, this platform is greatly appreciated. Sister Tiffany says this was a good show. My sister, Miss Harriet, she said that she really enjoyed the discussion. So family, we'll see you back here, same place, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Sunday. Peace and Black Power. Oh, hold on. Get your R.E.A.D Book Club shirts. Get your R.E.A.D Book Club shirt. Regain, elevate. Regain, elevate, aspire, and determine. Get your R.E.A.D Book Club shirts, family. And you can get them from Harvey. You got to get one, T-Rolo. Harvey.Lewis. Let me put it up. Harvey.Lewis at gmail.com. So let me put this here. This is his email address, family. Queen T said, I want one. Send him an email. In the subject, say R.E.A.D Book Club t-shirt so he'll know. But yeah, get your R.E.A.D Book Club t-shirt. Okay, family? All right. We out here, family. Peace.
Peace.
And Black Power.